Our guest is a familiar voice on our program. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. He's been holding that role for quite some time, and he had a different role last week, but a very important one as well. Steve Millington joins us in the studio on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 8:34:64. And first of all, you had jury duty.
Yep, I sure did. And that's an interesting process. It's part of our civic duty that we have to attend to. So they had a huge pool of people that they had selected. And I think they had from number one up to like 55 or 58, something like that. And they choose from that group 13 people to sit in. This was a criminal trial. So they, although the jury is only the final deliberation is 12 people, they always seat a 13th person in the event that something happens to one of the jurors. They must have 12 voters as they deliberate and arrive at a verdict.
Did this have an impact on your other duties last week? I mean, obviously, maybe not.
No,
Obviously,
not really. Um, they you had to fill out a questionnaire so that both judges, both attorneys had a full list of, okay, you are so and so, and they don't use names, they use numbers. And so I was seated in chair number 22. So they never referred to me by name. It was always number 22. We want to ask you a question. Number 22. We wanted number 14, number 50, number. So they go down through the page, and when they get all done, the two attorneys and the judge have a worksheet that they pass back and forth to each other, and you can see them scratching names and adding names, and pretty soon they start down the page, and they just read off your number, and you go sit in the jury box.
I was going to say it reminds me of that old TV show where the guy was always being chased by the big white ball, and the voice would come on and say, "You are number 6."
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so anyway, we had 3 days of trial, testimony, and then deliberations, and come back with a verdict. And it was an interesting to watch you see that this is not like reality TV, and it's not like the movies or TV at all.
My dad was probably in his mid-50s the first time he ever got called, and I remember him saying the same thing. It was a real eye-opener as
Yeah.
to how everything works.
Now I have been on previous juries, but they were civil suits, and so each attorney is making their case that my client should be awarded this or whatever, and in both situations, we get down to close to the finish, and they would say, okay, we're going to excuse the jurors, and now I'd call the jurors back in, and they'd say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have settled this case. So thank you very much for your service, and good day.
We have a telephone caller with us.
Already?
Probably would like to ask you if you actually
Uh-oh.
got to be in charge of the hangman. It's 8:37.
Yeah,
Wasn't
right.
quite that type of trial. 63. You're on the air with Steve Millington on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
I don't want to know what the outcome was, but Steve, I want to know when you heard everything, did the judge come in and give you the law that it pertained to, or did they tell you to do it by your feelings?
No, that's one of the interesting things, and it's a very good point. When we first got seated as a jury, they handed us a little 3-ring binder, and inside that binder was a list of instructions to the jury. And it said, now, as you're deliberating and considering, here are 10 items that you must consider or watch for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when both attorneys had concluded their closing remarks, the judge handed us an additional packet of jury instructions. And if I remember, they went from instruction number 11 to number 20 or something like that. Included in the final instructions were, this case is about XYZ. According to the law in the state of Idaho, to find the defendant guilty, you must produce or substantiate these 4 things or these 6 things or whatever it is. And if you can't, beyond a reasonable doubt, it's not guilty. And then they come back on the other side and say, now that the defendant is going to use these items 1 through 5, and if they are prevalent, it's not guilty. And then you vote and come up with a guilty or not guilty. And then there was a secondary charge. Well, if he's not guilty of charge number 1, is he guilty or not guilty of charge number 2? And of course, if you choose guilty on charge number 1, then you disregard the other subsequent charges. So there was I'll bet you there was a total of 20 to 25 pages full of instructions, written instructions that the jury had to consider.
Did you have to buy your own lunch?
No.
Thank you for the call, and we've got more with Steve Millington coming up in just a moment. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, 64. 20 minutes now away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story as well. News Radio 1310 KLIX, and remind you can listen to us online anywhere at newsradio1310.com. Our guest in the studio, Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. He joins us on Tuesday mornings. A Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You want to clarify something quickly about lunch.
Yes. During the days that we were just hearing testimony and considering the trial, we were excused for an hour for lunch. And, you can do whatever you want. Do not talk with anybody. Do not talk with your other jurors. Be careful about conversations of any kind. And then come back. But the day that they put the jury onto deliberations, we had received the final instructions from the judge, the closing arguments. They go to your little room and figure out what's going on. That day, they provided lunch. So because you could not leave or discuss or actually at that point they say we do want you to start talking to the other jurors. You get rounded up with a bunch of people put in a little room and you try to talk. There was no big huge sporting events to talk about. It's the middle of July. We don't have much going on here. If it had been the middle of September, we could have had all kinds of college football to talk about, you see. So it was interesting. But yeah, they do, if the jury is in deliberations, then they do furnish the meal.
We have a caller with us, a couple of callers on this topic today, 845, 63, and you're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley.
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve and Bill. I had the honor of being on a jury here a while back on a theft case, and I was picked jury number 8, and when the trial started, I looked over at the defendant, and they just looked like they were guilty. I mean, it was almost like, well, they got to be guilty. There's no way this guy's innocent. And when we listened to the facts and went back in the room and deliberated, we actually found that person innocent because the prosecution just did not have the case. But it's really an honor having that role. In fact, I enjoyed it so much when the judge came in. I told him, just what I just told you. And I actually want to be a professional juror like, for a job. Every time there's a court case, give me a call because it was fun and interesting just going over the facts alone.
That's
what go by your gut instinct or, well, he's got the same name that somebody that I hate and stuff like this. I mean, it was very interesting, and it was actually a privilege to be on a jury. And I think that's something that everybody should do. And I'll take my comments off the air.
Thank you. And, our caller's absolutely correct. It is part of our civic duty. And one of the things, maybe the most important thing that makes our criminal justice system work is a trial by jury. They have to convince those people in that jury that either the guilt or the innocence, and actually they repeated many, many times, the defendant is innocent until proven guilty. And the responsibility of that proof rests with the prosecution. So they have to prove to you that the defendant is guilty of the crime charged.
On another subject, I had a couple of emails last week, and some of these came in from various Republican, I guess call them locals. They're not necessarily the county committee,
Mm-hmm.
but they came in from people who, in various towns and places, they put out resolutions. And I gather, even though I never read the word Sharia in one of them, that this was a resolution they'd like the county to go on record, the county party to go on record, saying that they would that we will not allow international law in court proceedings and the like. And I think there was a second one too that asked for, I don't know if it was in Jerome or if it was in Twin Falls County, but asking the party the same thing, asking the Republican Party to take a stand when it comes to refugee resettlement. And I know that you sent me an email asking me if I had any more details about it last week. They were going to present these, I guess, at a meeting.
Right.
Was there any discussion on this, and is it an area that the party would be involved or should be involved?
Well, number one, we had our monthly Central Committee meeting last Wednesday night. And interestingly enough, there was a spokesman who wanted to talk to us, and but they never brought that up. Now there was a concurrent resolution passed by the Idaho legislature in the 2010 legislative session, and it outlined a myriad of subjects and items, including the use of the word God in our public domain, and including that the laws to be enforced and in place in the United States of America would be those of the Constitution of the United States, that we would not be subject to foreign laws. Now, this kind of adds up to United Nations laws, Sharia laws, Islamic laws. The only ones we're going to recognize in the United States are going to be U.S. laws. We're not going to go. Now, I don't know what the final outcome of this particular resolution was, but they did enter it again and had copies available for all of us to consider. But we did not vote on it. We did not take up a resolution, either positive or negative, concerning it. But there is still a great deal of conversation occurring from many sources about the possibility of having the refugee center accept Syrian refugees. Now, I know that Jerome considered the same kind of a thing. I do not have knowledge as to what the final outcome of that was, but Twin Falls didn't discuss it or consider it.
It really comes down to just if you get to 51%, I guess something like this would pass, but you just don't necessarily have that. I'm guessing some people don't see it as really the business of the Republican Party.
That's kind of my feeling. As a Republican Party, we want to maintain and promote Republican ideals and values within the county and within the state. And this is a very localized issue. People really should be contacting the members of the Board of Trustees at the College of Southern Idaho. Keep in mind that the CSI basically is the overseer of this program. It's a federal program that they fund, a federal government funds it, and they just want someone to take over the responsibility of managing and directing the refugee relocation program. Okay, it could be anybody in the Magic Valley. It could be a church denomination. It could be a civic group. It could be whoever. The college took it on many years ago. I would say 25 years ago. I don't know for sure, but it's been a long time. And they have had above average success in that program. This is a major step in a what you might consider a new direction. In the past, we've had people come and they have been from war-torn countries. That qualifies for refugee status, and they come to this area and they have adopted mostly our culture and our environment, and they have done reasonably well.
I see the kids out skateboarding. That's a sign of adopting some, portions of the culture.
They've
obviously
got some of the culture involved in it,
Sure.
haven't they? And it's interesting. We now see children of some of these refugees, and they're doing extraordinary in regards to academic success in our local schools around here. So it's not it, the issue I think so many people have is that um, will they adopt our culture or will they want us to give preference to their culture? And that's I think the primary issue that people are concerned with. And
But you're suggesting that individual Republicans take their concerns that direction, or maybe to
go to the
elected leaders or someone who might have
yep.
some input or clout.
You could go to the congressional delegations and visit with them. They know our feelings. Go to the board of trustees at CSI and once again tell them, are you really sure this is a good thing for the college and for the Magic Valley? Now, if they decide, if CSI says we don't want any part of this, the federal government would still be in a position where they could go to some other nonprofit organization and they could become the facilitator of a refugee program that would include the Syrian people that we're concerned with right now.
On
So,
another note, since we've only got a few minutes left, it's 8:53:64. Our guest Steve Millington on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com with Bill Colley. Scott Walker announced yesterday a lot of people believe he is going to be the eventual Republican nominee, but I saw some polling today. He was actually fourth in the poll. Jeb Bush has a slight lead over Trump, and then, oddly enough, Ted Cruz is behind Trump. So then I thought if Trump drops out, which I think is a likelihood, or he fades away, then Cruz picks up his people because they're on a lot of the same issues. Cruz then vaults to number one. Walker would be third. Is it a little too early to start trying to figure out who's going to be where?
well, I think there's still 16 of them on the page, and some of them have minuscule percentages.
George Pataki.
Yeah, and Lindsey Graham. The several that I saw this morning, they had a 0 point something, less than 1% of the. And I thought to myself, why don't you people just, go find something else to do? Um, it's going to be interesting. There are some debates coming up, I think, in late August or September, and I don't remember the dates, but I think that Fox News is going to host one of the first debates, and they want to limit it to the top 10 people. So right now, the major thrust is to make sure that I'm in that first category, that first tier, top 10.
A lot of people seem to like Walker, whether or not he's their first choice. He seems to be a lot of people's number two, and he when he does say that I have a proven track record, this
He
is
does.
not just
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that's not that's not
it's real.
media fodder. It's real. 3 elections in 4 years and won them handily. Major turnarounds and changes. A Republican governor in a very blue state taking on the unions and getting them under control. There's a lot of things there that Scott Walker has done that people need to take a better look at.
Very quickly, a couple minutes to go. There was a poll I saw in the Press Tribune over the weekend that says Idaho now has more people who claim they are independents than Republicans or Democrats, and then the pollster from Utah said that this could mean that we'll have a Democrat win the governor's race in 2018, and I thought fat chance, but the number of independents out there just seems to be growing.
There seems to be a real stigma about proclaiming yourself to be a Republican. And so if you force people into a corner, which most pollsters want to do, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat or are you an independent? The safest answer is I'm independent. I make my own choices. I have my own brains. I review things. I discuss them, and I make my own choices. As opposed to I'm a Democrat and I don't care who's running. I'm going to vote for Democrats. Or I'm a Republican and I'm always going to vote Republican. So you will see a lot of people hang on to the independent name tag. Now, I haven't seen the statistics for the last couple of years, but I know in 2012 there was the Republicans had like 36 or 38% of the electorate, and the independents had over 30, and the Democrats had like only 25. And so that doesn't surprise me that the category called independents would be creeping up, and this becomes a challenge to the Republican Party. We have got to see to it that the voters out there in the state of Idaho understand Republican principles and policies, and we are your best choice for governing the state of Idaho, and therefore vote Republican.
I read today a story where a fellow was out with a new book, and he says, got to be positive. We're running out of time here, but he says, you got to be positive. And he says, you've got to, instead of criticizing the other side, go tell people what you can actually, how you can benefit their lives.
That's right. Don't beat up on the other guy. Tell the population, tell the voters, we can do this for you, or I will do this for you.
Yeah, you leave the mocking of the liberals to me.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why that Trump has surged in the polls. He's telling everybody, this is wrong, and I'm going to fix it here, and that's wrong, and I'm going to fix it over there. And that's what people want to hear. Somebody who has an idea of how to fix the problems.
Steve Millington joining us in studio this morning. We will see him again next week on Tuesday morning, right?
Yes, sir.
He doesn't have jury duty for at least another 2 years.
I got off of it.
Fox News is straight ahead. One more hour of Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hey, some news too, just I want to pass along about a hearing taking place at City Hall tomorrow night. Hopefully we'll be able to squeeze that in the next hour.